The former FBI head, James Comey, is now fighting a subpoena to appear before the House Judiciary Committee.
Not to avoid giving testimony, but he said to prevent his testimony from being used as part of what he called a corrosive narrative, that the FBI was lenient with Hillary Clinton and that President Trump has been saddled with unwarranted scrutiny. Defense attorney said Comey should not be coerced into participating in what the lawsuit called a partisan effort to undermine the FBI.
There are new questions about one of Facebook's top executives, Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg. Several reports now say she had Facebook staffers research the finances of billionaire George Soros after he called for Facebook to be regulated and labeled the social network a menace to society.
3 people killed in a Southern California crash, the vehicle being chased by Border Patrol.
Witnesses say the truck was going over 100 miles an hour trying to get away from the Border Patrol agents in pursuit behind it. When on wet, rainy roads, a driver lost control and the passengers were killed and severely injured. Those who were injured could not be airlifted because of the poor weather. The driver of the truck, a U.S. citizen, was arrested.
Facial recognition technology is showing up at Atlanta's airport. Delta says country's first biometric terminal goes live tomorrow.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas at Windsor Castle. The Queen's staff decorated the grounds and placed this spectacular 23-foot Norman fir in St. George's Hall. It took a day and a half for staff to adorn the tree with 7,000 twinkling lights and regal golden ornaments.
My Christmas tree looks just like that, if only. All right, first, let's go ahead and check in with ABC's Devin Dwyer. He is in Argentina right now, tracking President Trump, who is there for the G20 Summit. And we're also joined by ABC's Pierre Thomas, who will also join us in this conversation. But Devin, let's start with you. We know President Trump is expected to meet with world leaders. And while this G20 Summit gets underway, there are so many contentious issues happening on the sidelines. What can you tell us?
Hey, Stephanie, good morning. Yeah, the president is at the G20 right now, just got underway a few minutes ago. He's rubbing elbows with all those world leaders, made eyes with Vladimir Putin this morning, walked past Saudi Arabia's crown prince. But the real story here, as you say, are the big meetings that President Trump has set up on the sidelines. Early this morning, the president already made history here in South America, Stephanie, when he signed the new U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement. That's the deal that replaces NAFTA. Big deal here on the last day in office for Mexico's President Peña Nieto. Justin Trudeau of Canada was there. The president hailed this as a campaign promise kept, a good deal for American workers. Later this afternoon, he'll hold some more bilateral meetings. We'll see what news comes. And then all eyes on Vladimir Putin and see if that meeting does materialize. The White House isn't ruling out that both leaders will talk to each other. Steph?
And Devin, that trade deal negotiation taking months, finally happening. But let's talk about the president's tweets from overnight. He was tweeting a lot about that tower, possibly in Moscow, and that business dealing. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the president was up early tweeting here, perhaps not surprising at home, but after a long overnight flight, the first we heard of him this morning was on Twitter, very early Eastern time. And as you say, he was lashing out really at the Mueller bombshell yesterday related to his former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. The president very defensive this morning, saying that his business dealings with Russia during the 2016 campaign, which Michael Cohen is now talking to Robert Mueller about. The president tweeted saying they were very legal, very cool, the president said. He said he lightly looked at doing a building deal somewhere in Russia during the campaign. No problem with that. Of course, we know, Stephanie, the president didn't talk a lot about doing business deals in Russia during the campaign. Instead, he tried to downplay ties with Russia. So this is something that we're finding out now, that as Robert Mueller is looking into this meeting, the big question is, what did he ask President Trump? What did President Trump have to say to Robert Mueller? And will any of this get anybody in any hot water? We don't know right now what is behind Robert Mueller's inquiry into this specific potential deal that the president points out never actually happened, but certainly something weighing on him as he kicks off this summit.
Devin, and as you mentioned, the Russia probe, let's bring in ABC's Pierre Thomas. Pierre, thank you for joining us. With Michael Cohen now agreeing to cooperate with investigators, can you talk a little bit about what that means for the administration and what it may possibly mean for Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation?
Well, the key here is that Michael Cohen is one of the president's longtime confidants. Of all the people who pled guilty or been indicted in connection with the Russia probe, he's the person who knew the president the longest, more than a decade. He's the person who allegedly was working with the president behind the scenes, the so-called fixer. So the special counsel's office has interviewed him more than 70 hours, talking about a range of subjects. So therefore, the most important thing here is that Cohen has cooperated, is continuing to cooperate, and that could spell potential trouble for people around the president.
An incredible development there. All right, Pierre, thank you so much. Now let's get back to Devin there in Argentina. You have an article out on abcnews.com that goes over the 7 things to watch at the summit. Can you touch on some of them for us?
Sure. Well, we've talked about a few of them already, Stephanie. The on-again, off-again nature of this meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin is certainly one of the things to keep an eye on. They will rub elbows today, but will they talk? Well, they talk about Ukraine and that naval incident skirmish in the waters off Crimea just a few days ago. That's a hot topic. The biggest topic here at the G20, though, is the president's summit tomorrow night with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This comes amidst, of course, this escalating trade war between the U.S. and China, the pain being felt on both sides of the Pacific. The president will have dinner with Xi. They're hoping to work out a deal. The president says he's open to one. He doesn't think he'll agree to one easily. Chinese President Xi equally dug in. Huge implications for the U.S. economy. That takes place tomorrow night. That's a big one to watch. And then, of course, the president's also meeting here. South Korean President Moon is in town. Japanese Prime Minister Abe is here. They're going to want to talk about the stalled negotiations with North Korea. So a lot going on. Those meetings are tomorrow and still a lot to play out, Stephanie.
And there's so much to talk about. We just didn't want to let you go, Devin, but go enjoy yourself there in Buenos Aires. Now, this summit, we do want to mention, does come after the killing of Washington Post reporter Jamal Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia's Istanbul consulate. So it'll be interesting to see how the Saudi crown prince is received there in Argentina by world leaders. But now let's move on stateside here to the Marriott. Marriott company announces a data breach of 500 million Starwood guests. How many SPG members are out there? So many, millions of customers. How does this even happen? Millions of people, I'm sure, are wondering the same thing. Ansar Hassan from KGO TV there in California is breaking it down for us. And Ansar, the company says in some cases, credit card numbers, passport numbers, and birth dates for millions of people, it's all out there. What can you tell us?
Yeah, good morning, Stephanie. There's a lot of information. In fact, Marriott admitted this morning that this goes back to possibly 2014. The hotel chain says they found out about this back in September, but they're only today notifying customers. Now, you can see behind me there's an unrelated labor dispute that's happening here in San Francisco, but Marriott says the hackers copied and then encrypted the personal information, as you mentioned, of possibly 500 million guests who made reservations at the Marriott Starwood properties. Now, the Starwood brand includes hotels like the W Hotel, St. Regis, and Sheraton Hotels and Resorts. Now, the information taken includes names, addresses, email accounts, date of births, even passport numbers. But here's the big one. Marriott says the hackers may have even gotten the credit card information of some of their guests. In a statement, they said, quote, "There are 2 components needed to decrypt payment card numbers, and at this point, Marriott has not been able to rule out the possibility that both were taken." Now, we don't know how many people this affects, but according to Jim McCoy, who's with Vector Home Cybersecurity, he says this isn't the largest cyber breach in terms of record, but he claims this is easily in the top 5 worst attacks that impact the general public. He says hackers were caught while accessing the information, which means the data was not likely sold. That gives the hotel chain a bit of a window to handle this. Now, other analysts say there's another issue. This could bring out a set of second scammers, people who were sending out phishing emails pretending to be, Marriott and trying to get information that way. Now, Marriott says they will start to email customers who were affected. They've also set up a website and call center specifically to handle these cases. Reporting live in San Francisco, Ansar Hassan, ABC News.
Ansar, thank you very much for that. Ansar Hassan from our ABC-owned station there in San Francisco, California. So frightening. All right, let's move on to New Jersey now, where a man there has been charged with killing his brother and his entire family and then setting his own home on fire with his family inside. ABC's Will Reeves has the latest on this gruesome case. Will, what are the latest developments there?
Good morning, Stephanie. Just behind me in the Monmouth County Superior Courthouse, Paul Canero walked into the courtroom in a green jumpsuit with handcuffs and shackles on just a minute before 9:30 this morning for his detention hearing, which is procedural. He was in court. He was in the room for about 11 minutes total. The judge, James McGann, read him his rights, and the prosecutor read the charges to Paul Canero. And the charges, again, are 4 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated arson. Those charges are consolidated because he lit his brother's home on fire and his own, prosecutors allege, plus a count of knife possession and a count of gun possession. 8 charges in total. The prosecutor was standing about 4 feet away, face to face with Paul Canero when he read those charges, and Canero looked disheveled and completely flat. His countenance did not change throughout the entire time he was in court. He had about a 1,000-yard stare, but he looked at the prosecutor and stayed completely still. His voice was level when he stood up to read his rights. And then about as soon as it began, it was over and he was shuffled out of court, and his next court date is expected to be sometime in January, Stephanie.
And Will, you described for us there the emotions that Paul Canero showed, not much. Who else was in the courtroom? Was part of the family there? What was the scene like inside?
Well, there was a lot of press, I will say that. There were, to my count, about 70 people in the room total. The first row was all law enforcement, including County Prosecutor Christopher Gramiccioni, who we've seen on multiple press conferences and such. No family members were in the room. Paul Canero's lawyers came out and did a brief press conference after the hearing and said the family was not there, and that was aligned with what we saw. Lots of press, lots of interest, of course, in this case nationwide, and we were glad to be there, and there were a bunch of people paying attention to this gruesome case.
Certainly a story we'll continue to cover. Thank you very much for that, Will, in New Jersey for us. Now let's head over to California, where mudslides are threatening areas already devastated by wildfires. ABC's Will Carr has more from the area.
Good morning, Stephanie. The rain has let up for a little bit out here, but you can see the sandbags are still here in Agora Hills, California, because this has really become a bit of a double-edged sword for this community. They just had the Woolsey fire race through and destroy a number of homes. The homes that are still standing in this area, you can see, have sandbags in front of them as well. That's because in the distance, you can see that hillside. That is a major burn scar right now. That means the fire raced through, burned all the trees in this area, which would normally stop all of that rock, debris, and mud that can flow down when you get rain that has just pounded this area for the past 24 to 48 hours, creating potential mudslides. People here hoping that will not happen. We've also seen dangerous driving conditions, big rigs sliding off of the interstates, cars flipped over. 4 firefighters were hurt while responding to accidents on the roads this week. And the bad news is, heading into this weekend, there's more bad weather on the way. We're expecting more rain on Saturday and into next week. Stephanie.
Seems as though residents here are taking the precautions that they need to. All right, well, let's check in with ABC's Rob Marciano, who is looking at our current weather across the country and also there in California.
Hello, Stephanie. Great to be with you. We continue to track this very potent Pacific storm system, which really is going to impact the entire country. We'll start you off with what it's done in California. Some heavy rain around the LA County, about 5 inches or so, and then near the wildfire burn areas, that is enough to do some debris flowing, and that's what happened near the Holy Fire. This is Rice Canyon. You can see just how black that debris flow is from all the charred landscape that it's been taken out from the heavy rain that was coming down in the last 24 hours. Still have advisories up. As a matter of fact, the winter storm warning, a new one posted for the northern Sierra with the next storm coming in. The current one is moving quickly. will dump a fair amount of snow across the mountains, but the biggest threat tonight is going to be severe weather. Dallas to Little Rock, things start after nightfall and continue through the overnight. Could see some strong supercells with big hail and big wind and maybe some tornadoes. Then going across I-10, New Orleans, Biloxi, Montgomery, Tallahassee tomorrow. And some of that rain will be heavy at times across the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, eventually getting into the Northeast tomorrow night for a wet Saturday night into Sunday. There is a snow component to this system at the higher elevations outside of L.A. Big Bear, the road heading up to that mountain, the skiers love to see that. And Flagstaff, they got about 7-8 inches of new snow. And some of the Sierra already seeing 2 to 3 feet. The Rockies will see about a foot in spots, but the Plains, as this thing winds up tonight and tomorrow, could see blizzard conditions in some areas, but I think about a foot of snow in Nebraska potentially. And to end on a more serene note, there you go. I don't see a pot of gold, Stephanie, but I certainly see all the colors of the rainbow extending into the Pacific Ocean there. This shot from our ABC-owned station, KGO, their chopper, shooting it yesterday during one of the rainstorms off the coast of San Mateo, California. It is a beautiful spot, but this time of year, they can get them some storms. I'll race you to the end of that rainbow to maybe find that pot of gold, and then we can both retire. Stephanie, back over to you.
Absolutely. The rainbow is gorgeous, just a little bright spot among all of the storms there in California. Well, let's turn now to former First Lady Michelle Obama, who is on a major book tour. She is in New York City right now for a book signing, and ABC's Rachel Scott is there in Union Square for all of it. I'm sure there are a lot of Michelle Obama fans there, lots of excitement. Tell us about the scene.
Yes, lots of excitement, Stephanie, on all sides, because this book, Becoming by Michelle Obama, is the best-selling book of 2018. So her team is obviously very excited, but you also have hundreds of people here waiting to get their copy of the book signed by Michelle Obama. Just before we started, we actually had people move out of our live shot because they said they're playing hooky from work today, so they don't want their bosses seeing them on our digital platforms or on TV. But they said it's totally worth it either way because they are waiting for their chance to meet her. So 500 people will be able to meet her today very quickly, get their copy of the book signed. They had to come to this Barnes & Noble's location in Union Square here in New York City yesterday. 9 a.m. is when the doors open. They had to purchase a wristband, purchase a copy of that book to get it signed. Only 500 spots available. I talked to one man who said that he was number 80 in line, and that was at 7 a.m. So you can only imagine how early the first person in line got there. Now comes to, what do you say, right? Everyone here is waiting behind me. They're waiting to go inside, waiting for Mrs. Obama to arrive, and they're trying to figure out, do they ask her a question? One supporter told me that they're going to beg her to run for president. So now that's kind of now that the excitement is here, they have their wristbands and they're ready to meet her. Now it's just trying to figure out the correct words. This is all part of Mrs. Obama's book tour. Like you said, she's stopping in 10 different states around the country, stopping and she's having moderators like Oprah Winfrey, special guests like President Obama stop by. So lots of excitement here in New York City before she heads off to the next stop, Stephanie.
Fantastic, Rachel. I'm sure those fans will have a lot of time to think about what they'll tell Mrs. Obama as they're waiting there in line. I've seen a lot of those pictures of those fans meeting with Michelle on Twitter and Instagram. They're all over the place. Thank you so much, Rachel, for that report. All right, if you're looking for a vacation hotspot, we may have the place for you. You can stay at the world's most remote hotel nearly for free. Dirt cheap. Hotels.com is offering to pick up the tab for travelers willing to travel to a very tiny town in Greenland. The population is just 450. It sounds perfect, right? Some solitude, have the place all to yourself. The small hotel has 7 rooms and offers stunning views of the northern lights. Book now. They don't have a lot of rooms. If you book by the end of next month, the company will pay for 99% of your stay during the month of March. Perfect for spring break. You guys want to go? Maybe look into it. We'll Google it. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching ABC News Live. Don't forget to watch The Briefing Room. That's coming up at 3:30 and World News Prime at 8 o'clock tonight. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Thanks for watching.